Hi, my name is Madison Parker. I'm 26 years old, and today I'm going to tell you the most shocking story of my life. How my own family forced me into an arranged marriage with a man I didn't love, but I turned their plan into the most satisfying revenge imaginable. Before I start, tell me what state you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. If you've ever felt like your family treats you like property instead of a person, my story will give you the courage you need to fight back. It all started when my father, Richard Parker, announced that I would marry Brandon Whitmore, heir to the Whitmore real estate empire. What my family didn't know is that I had been secretly building my own fortune, and their forced marriage would become the perfect stage for revealing a truth that would destroy everything they believed about me. You won't believe what happened when I stood up at the altar and announced my real net worth in front of 400 wedding guests. I grew up in an old money family in Charleston, South Carolina. My father, Richard Parker, owned Parker Industries, a medium-sized manufacturing company that had been in the family for 3 generations. My mother, Catherine, came from a prominent Southern family with deep roots in local politics and society. I have one older brother, James, who was always the golden child. From childhood, my family made it clear that James would inherit the business and I would marry well to create strategic alliances. This was the old Southern way. Sons build empires, daughters marry into them. I was expected to be beautiful, charming, and obedient. Nothing more. My parents enrolled me in all the right activities: cotillion classes, equestrian lessons, piano recitals, charity galas. I was groomed to be the perfect Southern belle who would attract the right kind of husband. Every aspect of my life was controlled and planned around making me marriageable to wealthy families. James was sent to Harvard Business School and immediately brought into the family company upon graduation. He was given a corner office, company car, and clear path to ownership. Meanwhile, I was sent to Sweetbriar College to study art history, something decorative and non-threatening that would make me an interesting conversationalist at dinner parties. But I had other plans. While my family thought I was just playing around with pretty pictures, I was actually studying the art market intensively. I started buying undervalued pieces with money I earned from tutoring other students. I had a natural eye for spotting pieces that would appreciate in value. During college, I also secretly took business and finance courses online. I learned about investments, market analysis, and portfolio management. My parents thought I was just being studious about my art classes, but I was actually building knowledge that would make me financially independent. The extended family was part of the problem too. Grandmother Eleanor, my father's mother, constantly reminded me that Parker women had a duty to marry well and produce heirs. She would tell stories about how she married grandfather William to unite 2 shipping fortunes, as if romance was a luxury we couldn't afford. Uncle Thomas, my father's brother, owned a smaller logistics company and was always looking for ways to merge with larger operations. He saw my potential marriage as an opportunity to gain access to bigger deals through my future husband's connections. Cousin Jennifer, Uncle Thomas's daughter, was 2 years older and had already married into a prominent banking family. She was held up as the perfect example of what I should aspire to: a beautiful wife who hosted charity events and looked gorgeous at her husband's arm during business functions. The pressure really intensified when I turned 24. My parents started arranging meetings with eligible bachelors from prominent families. Every month, there was a new dinner party, charity gala, or country club event where I was essentially being presented for inspection by potential suitors. I hated every minute of it. These men saw me as an acquisition, not a person. They would ask my father about my education, my family connections, my appearance, as if I wasn't even in the room. When they did speak to me directly, it was about safe topics like flower arranging or party planning. The worst part was that my own family encouraged this treatment. My mother would coach me before these events, telling me to smile more, speak less, and always let the men lead conversations. My father would review my outfits to make sure they were attractive but not too revealing, wealthy looking but not flashy. When Brandon and I were introduced at the Charleston Country Club Spring Gala, I could immediately tell this was different from the other arranged meetings. Both sets of parents were watching us more intently, the conversation felt more serious, and there was an air of expectation that hadn't been present before. Brandon was handsome enough, tall, blonde, well-dressed in that preppy Southern way, but he was also arrogant, entitled, and condescending. During our first conversation, he spent 20 minutes talking about his golf handicap and his new yacht, barely asking me anything about myself. When I mentioned my art studies, he said it was cute that I had hobbies. Over the following months, Brandon and I were pushed together constantly. Our families arranged joint vacations, dinner parties, and business events. It became clear that a marriage between us was being orchestrated for purely financial reasons. Combining Parker Industries with Whitmore Development would create a regional powerhouse. Meanwhile, my secret art investments were performing incredibly well. I had started with $5,000 in college and had grown it to over $2 million by age 25. I was buying pieces from emerging artists, holding them for 18 to 24 months, then selling when their careers took off. My success rate was extraordinary because I had developed an eye for talent that galleries were overlooking. I also started a small online consulting business, advising other collectors on art investments. Word spread quietly through wealthy circles that there was a young woman with incredible track record for picking winners. I was earning substantial consulting fees while maintaining complete secrecy from my family. The forced engagement announcement came at Thanksgiving dinner. My father stood up in front of 30 family members and announced that Brandon had asked for my hand and that the wedding would take place the following spring. I hadn't been consulted. Brandon had asked my father's permission, not mine. When I tried to object privately later that evening, my father made it clear this wasn't a request. He said the Parker family name and business depended on this alliance. My mother cried and begged me not to embarrass the family. James said I was being selfish and ungrateful for everything they had given me. The engagement party was scheduled for January at the most exclusive country club in Charleston. Wedding planning began immediately with my mother and Brandon's mother making every decision. I wasn't consulted about the venue, the dress, the flowers, or the guest list. I was treated like an ornament being prepared for display. During this period, I made a decision that would change everything. I reached out to auction houses in New York and London and put my entire art collection up for sale. The timing was perfect. Several of my artists had just broken into major galleries, and demand for their work was skyrocketing. The sale of my art collection netted me $12 million after fees and taxes. Suddenly, I had more liquid assets than most people see in a lifetime. But instead of revealing this immediately, I used the money to make an even bigger play. I started quietly purchasing stock in both Parker Industries and Whitmore Development. Both companies were family-controlled but had some publicly traded shares. Over 6 months, I accumulated significant positions in both companies, using shell corporations and investment advisors to hide my identity. I also used my art world connections to meet other wealthy individuals who were looking for investment opportunities. Through these relationships, I assembled a consortium of investors who were interested in acquiring manufacturing companies in the Southeast. The research I conducted on both families' businesses revealed some interesting information. Parker Industries was in better financial shape than I had realized, but it was also undervalued because my father was conservative and hadn't pursued growth opportunities. Whitmore Development was more leveraged and risky than they presented publicly. Most importantly, I discovered that the proposed merger between the companies wasn't as beneficial as both families believed. Whitmore Development needed Parker Industries more than the reverse, and Brandon's family was essentially using the marriage to acquire a stable, profitable business to offset their riskier real estate investments. Armed with this knowledge, I hired the best corporate attorney in Charleston and began planning my strategy. The wedding had been scheduled for May at the historic Magnolia Plantation, with 400 guests, including Charleston's entire social and business elite. 2 weeks before the wedding, I received the final piece of information I needed. My attorney had discovered that Brandon was already having an affair with his ex-girlfriend from college. There were receipts for jewelry, hotel rooms, and vacations that he had taken with her while engaged to me. But instead of being devastated, I was relieved. This gave me the moral justification I needed to execute my plan without feeling guilty about embarrassing my family publicly. The rehearsal dinner was held at the Charleston Harbor Resort, with 150 guests including both families, the wedding party, and close friends. During the traditional toasts, I asked for permission to speak. I stood up with champagne glass in hand and began what everyone thought would be a sweet thank you speech. I started by thanking both families for bringing Brandon and me together and for teaching me so much about the importance of strategic partnerships in business and marriage. I talked about how this experience had opened my eyes to opportunities I never would have considered otherwise. Then I revealed the first surprise. I announced that I had become quite successful in art investments over the past several years and that I wanted to share my good fortune with the happy couple. I said that my wedding gift to Brandon would be the down payment on a house, a check for $5 million. The room erupted in gasps and applause. Both families looked shocked but pleased. My father was beaming with pride, probably thinking I had hidden some family trust fund that he had forgotten about. But I wasn't finished. I explained that my success in art had led to other investment opportunities and that I had recently become quite interested in manufacturing and real estate. I announced that I had assembled an investment group that was prepared to make a substantial offer to acquire both Parker Industries and Whitmore Development. The mood in the room started to shift as people realized this wasn't just a sweet toast anymore. I continued by saying that my investment group was prepared to offer $40 million for Parker Industries, nearly double what anyone had estimated the company was worth. My father's face went from pride to confusion to alarm as he realized what was happening. I explained that the acquisition would allow both companies to expand much more aggressively than a simple merger would permit, and that all existing employees would be retained with substantial raises. Then came the final blow. I announced that, unfortunately, Brandon would not be part of this exciting new venture because my investment group had a strict policy against working with individuals who were currently engaged in extramarital affairs. I had documentation of his relationship with his ex-girlfriend, including receipts and photos, which I was prepared to share if necessary. The rehearsal dinner ended in complete chaos. Brandon's parents were demanding explanations, my parents were in shock, and guests were taking pictures and making phone calls to spread the gossip throughout Charleston society. Brandon initially tried to deny the affair, but when I showed his parents copies of credit card receipts for jewelry purchases and hotel reservations with his ex-girlfriend's name, he broke down and admitted everything. His father was furious, not about the cheating, but about the fact that Brandon had jeopardized the business deal. My parents took me aside and demanded to know where I had gotten $12 million. When I explained my art investments and business consulting, my father was stunned. He had always assumed I was just playing with pretty pictures, never realizing I had built a legitimate business empire. The wedding was canceled, obviously, but the business acquisition went forward exactly as I had planned. My investment consortium purchased Parker Industries for $40 million with me as the majority stakeholder and new CEO. My father was retained as chairman emeritus with a generous consulting contract. Whitmore Development was not so fortunate. When news spread about Brandon's affair and the canceled wedding, their stock price dropped significantly. They had been counting on the merger with Parker Industries to stabilize their finances, and without it, they struggled to service their debt obligations. 6 months later, Whitmore Development filed for bankruptcy. Brandon had to move back in with his parents and take a job as a realtor with a small local firm. His ex-girlfriend, who had been expecting him to leave me for her, broke up with him when she realized he was no longer wealthy. My transformation into a successful businesswoman was covered extensively in the Charleston Society pages and business journals. Suddenly, I was being invited to speak at business schools and women's entrepreneur groups. The same people who had seen me as marriage material were now seeking my investment advice. James initially resented losing his inheritance, but when he saw how much more successful the company became under my leadership, he embraced his new role as vice president of operations. Our relationship actually improved because we were finally working together as equals, instead of him looking down on his little sister. My parents struggled to adjust to the new reality, but they couldn't argue with the results. Within 2 years, I had expanded Parker Industries into 3 new states and increased revenues by 300%. They were wealthier than they had ever dreamed possible, even without controlling the company. I also established a foundation to provide business education and startup funding for young women who wanted to become entrepreneurs. Having experienced firsthand how Southern society tries to limit women's ambitions, I was determined to help others break free from those constraints. The most satisfying part wasn't the money or the business success. It was proving to everyone, including myself, that I was never just marriage material. I was always a businesswoman, waiting for the opportunity to show what I could do. Today, Parker Industries is worth over $200 million and employs 2,000 people across the Southeast. I'm regularly featured in Forbes and Fortune magazines as one of the most successful young entrepreneurs in America. The forced marriage that was supposed to limit my options became the catalyst for unlimited success. My family thought they were trading me for business advantages, but instead they discovered that I was the business advantage they had been overlooking all along. The lesson from this experience is clear. Never let anyone else define your worth or your future. The people who see you as a means to an end are usually the ones who are most surprised when you become the end goal yourself. If you've ever been pressured into decisions that don't reflect who you really are, remember that you always have more power than you realize. Sometimes you just need the right moment to reveal it. Like this video if my story inspired you. Subscribe for more stories of women taking control of their destinies. And tell me in the comments about times you've had to fight for your independence. Remember, you're never just anything. You're always exactly who you choose to be.